everything we do that is resembling the way that we used to live historically is making our bodies better. Sleeping at night, exposing ourselves to nature, to cold and heat, to real food, to sunlight is also so important.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Life podcast. And today I am very excited to be speaking with an expert on a topic that is so important, and so many people have access to this information, yet very few people know how to interpret it. And that's what we are going to be discussing today. We have Dr. Torkil Faero. He's a general practitioner and emergency physician, documentary filmmaker, author, and photographer. In 1996, he was one of the first Norwegian medics to work for Doctors Without Borders when he worked in war-torn Angola. And over a 25-year career as a freelance doctor, he has worked all over Norway, had tens of thousands of consultations, and gained a unique picture of the diseases that plague us. He has learned that the cause is most often found in the stresses our lifestyles place on our bodies. He is the author of a book called The Pulse Cure, which is the topic we're going to be discussing in depth today about heart rate variability. You've probably seen this if you have an Apple Watch or a Whoop or an Oura Ring or any kind of tracking device. You will see HRV, heart rate variability. But do you know how to interpret that information? That's what his book, The Pulse Cure, is all about. It's occupied the Norwegian bestsellers list for 59 weeks and counting. And it's really the first and only book that examines the significance of heart rate variability and gives practical and holistic plan to improve overall health. So Dr. Torkil, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Taylor. It's so nice to be here. I have actually listened to your podcast before I knew I was going on here.
Amazing. That's so cool. Thank you. Well, yeah, I'm so excited to share this information with our community. So many people, again, I was just telling you last night, even someone who's very knowledgeable about health reads books about health and podcasts, and we're comparing our information from our tracking devices. And he said HRV, and we're looking at HRV, and he says higher HRV is better, right? And he wasn't even sure, right? And this is such an important metric for people to know about. So really excited to talk about it. And maybe let's start with, you have an amazing history as a doctor and all the patients that you've seen. How did you get interested in heart rate variability and decide that this was such a big factor?
Yeah, heart rate variability was actually, I was on a sailing trip with my family. We were sailing in French Polynesia. I was in a hammock close to an island close to Tahiti, and I was reading the book The Body Keeps the Score with Bessel van der Kolk that you probably know. And in the book I was reading about HRV. I'd never heard about it. This was 2019, like 5 years ago. Never heard about it. And it was written there that it was an important metric for judging the autonomic nervous system. And when I came home, I realized that there are devices that can track the HRV. And then I thought, okay, this is super interesting. I really need to learn about this. And I thought that my HRV and my stress levels will be very good because I heard about the autonomic nervous system as a fight, flight, and freeze. And I was kind of never scared I was active, but I was not scared or fighting or fleeing anything. But I realized that once I started tracking that my stress levels were quite high. So I was surprised by that. And then I started by myself just to try to find out how can I regulate my own nervous system. And then after some time, my publisher asked me, is this a book for us? Can we use this for a book? And I thought, yes, it could be. But originally, the reason why I started caring about my own health was that my father died at 73. And I realized, okay, I want to live longer than that. And I started educating myself on what can I do to live longer and healthier. And this is kind of part of that journey, really.
Amazing. So tell us, what is heart rate variability? Let's start with the basics. Many people might not even know.
Yeah, heart rate variability is the variation between heartbeats. So if you are in a relaxed state, then when you breathe in, your pulse will raise a little bit, measured in milliseconds. And when you breathe out and there's less oxygen in the lungs, the heart rate will slow down a little bit. And this is possible to detect with pulse, with wearables like Oura Ring and Whoop Band and Garmin watches and so on. So that is in the relaxed state. But when we're in a stressful state, for whatever reason, the heart will beat a lot more steadily. And this is how these wearables can track whether you're in a relaxed state or in a stress state. And they can do that in the moment. And of course, 24/7, they are kind of keeping watch and giving you usually a lot of surprises about what affects your system. So the heart rate will tell you about the intensity of your physiology and reveals a lot more that is very important for us doctors, because now a lot of the diseases that plague us, they are based on inflammation, and the inflammation will also be visible in the heart rate variability. If I eat something that I can't tolerate, that creates inflammation, I will see it immediately. I will know which foods to avoid. It's on that level, and of course other things as
Wow.
well.
That's very interesting. And then you also have heart rate, right? Like beats per minute that are being tracked by many of these devices.
Yeah.
So, if someone is stressed, is their heart beats per minute going to go up? And then kind of like, let's talk
Yeah.
about the difference there.
Yeah. So if you get stressed, then your heart rate is going to go up and your heart rate variability will go down. But the heart rate variability is, I call it, it's like you're watching the pulse with a magnifying glass. So you can see more than just the pulse rate. So you can have a pulse of like, say, 65, but your heart rate variability can be different. It can be vary with the same pulse. So so it's a more accurate measure of your state, your inner state. Yeah.
And why is a high heart rate variability better than a low heart rate variability?
A high heart rate variability tells you that you have a good connection to your vagus nerve. You have a good regulation of your nervous system. So you are flexible when it comes to your nervous system, and that's an important thing, that you are not locked into a stressful state like so many of us are. And particularly when we don't know what stresses us, because that comes as a surprise to a lot of people that uses these wearables, because we have very good senses for outside threats, like our eyesight, our hearing, our smell and taste and touch and so on. Because historically, through ancient times, all the threats came from the outside, from other animals, from enemies, and from food and things that were not good to eat. But we never really needed a sense for our inner state. That was just built into the lifestyle. You were hunting or fleeing, or you were relaxing or having some fun. So if you go to hunter-gatherer societies around the world, they are relaxing most of the time. So I heard a podcast that you had not so long time ago, that we are built to be like 10% in the stressful state and 90% in the de-stressed state. And now a lot of us live with the totally opposite numbers.
Right, right. Yeah, so ideally you want a higher HRV and a lower beats per minute on your heart rate, right? Resting heart rate at least, right?
That's
And
right.
it's kind of interesting though, because higher heart rate, like when I first heard of heart rate variability, I was like, wait, so having your heart rate be able to go up higher and then back down lower, that's good. Like it didn't fully can you kind of make sense for that for people? Why is that better?
It's better because we need to stress. We need to exert ourselves. We need to, both mentally and physically, to build resilience. It's not a good thing to just be in the relaxed state. Then you will just get weaker and weaker and weaker, and at some point you will get into trouble. So we need to be able to regulate ourselves. We need to be able to perform at like top speed. But in order to do that, we have to relax at top speed too, to be very good at relaxing. So, and we need to be able to control this ourselves, and not just based on circumstances, that if you are in a stressful environment, you will be stressed. We should be able to to de-stress also in the middle of a city, in the middle of trouble. Yeah.
Interesting. And so people with a lower heart rate variability, it just shows that they're kind of just not getting their heart rate up and down enough. It's just kind of too stable.
Yeah. They don't have the same possibility to relax. So they're often locked in the chronic stress state. And we know that will be detrimental for the immune system. So the immune system will not work as well, and you will get all kinds of diseases, including the HRV is connected to 9 out of the 10 deadliest diseases in the United States.
Wow.
Cancer, heart disease, kidney disease, depression, dementia, and so on. So a low
people
HRV,
with a lower heart rate variability are more likely to have these conditions.
Yeah, and that is very important, that you cannot really compare your HRV to another person and say that your health is better or worse, because there's at least 30% genetics in this. And so that, like, if you had 30 in HRV and another person had 50, that doesn't necessarily mean that he has a better health than you. So what we should compare is only to our own HRV over time, and see what is the best HRV you can get. That's
Okay, very interesting. Very interesting.
But on the population level, if you look at like 100,000 people, then the ones with the lowest HRV will be most prone for these diseases, but not on an individual basis. Yeah.
Do you have any general guidelines of like, what do you consider a normal range for male and female? I know it's when you're younger, you're going to have a much higher HRV. Let's say someone in their 40s or 50s, what's a general range where it's like, this is average and this is low, and above that is high?
It seems that for young people, young healthy people, the variation in the normal is very, very wide. But I would think that for like a 25, 30-year-old, and maybe 50 in HRV would be somewhere on the average. And then when you come up to my age, it may be like 35 or 30. So it will decrease. I'm 54. So it will decrease as you age. And this is why sportsmen, except for Tom Brady and Ronaldo, will have to struggle to maintain their shape. Even if there are millions of dollars to make by playing football at 45 or 50, it's just not possible. Your body is not forgiving. You cannot recuperate enough from the training.
Right. And females, I think, tend to have a slightly lower HRV. Is that right?
Yeah, but it's not so much. The difference is very small, very small.
Okay, interesting.
And one thing that is important for women, of course, with their menstrual cycle, is that the week before menstruation, the HRV will be lower. You have less powers in that week, and a lot of sportswomen will consider that and train less hard for that week. But we should also consider all other strains for that week, and to be a bit more soft on ourselves for that week before the menstruation.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and I'm sure we definitely want to touch on some of the things people can do to increase their HRV. I'm actually pretty happy. I have the 8 sleep, and recently, over the past couple of weeks, I've gotten over 70s in my sleep for my HRV, and even hit 80 a couple times, and that seems to be trending upwards. So I'm like very happy and proud about that. I think that's kind of happened due to potentially increasing kind of intensity of my workouts, but then also recovering very well. I think that might be what has done it. But let's first talk about what are the things that cause a lower HRV, and then we'll maybe get into some of the things people can do to improve, which will probably be related. So you've talked about stress, right? So which is kind of an emotion. It's almost an emotional, mental thing many times. Stress, right? What is stressful for me or you might be not be the same as what's stressful for Elon Musk or someone else, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing, because it's very subjective. There's no there's no set thing that you can really do about that. I've also seen, obviously, if you really destroy yourself in a workout and you just, go in some crazy workout for 2 hours, then yes, that will tend to lower your HRV, because I guess that's putting stress on your body. So mental stress and working hard too hard, physical stress, are those the two main things that would kind of lower your HRV?
Yeah, there are two of the things. Yeah, the worst thing according to Whoop is alcohol.
Wow.
So alcohol can ruin your recovery for 5 days, really,
Mm,
until you are back again at the same level as before you were out drinking. And also food, a lot of food, ultra processed food that we are not really made to eat, will give you a bad score and
mm.
take some powers from you that you cannot use, that is not useful. And particularly that, and altitude, actually, according to Whoop, that they take in data from their members. The altitude is the second most stressful thing altitude is the most stressful thing after alcohol, and then comes disease after that. So there are lots of things that will strain you. And for example, if you have had trouble in your childhood, if you had some childhood traumas, you will have a nervous system that will not allow you to really rest at night and so on. So I see that this is will give bad curves, bad numbers on your HRV. And what more? So there are lots of factors in this. Also, when you eat. So fasting, intermittent fasting, will also show on your curves, on your Garmin watches in particular.
Lower or
So
higher? Like
you will
intermittent
get a
fasting would.
higher HRV. Yeah.
Interesting.
So the process of digesting food, that your food has to be digested into molecules. It has to be tested from the immune system. We know that 70% of the immune system is organized around your intestines. So it's a large job, and particularly if you have a leaky gut, then a meal can give you stress for hours, really.
Mm,
And then you will find out what can you tolerate. I found out that milk and gluten for me is not good, or flour based foods at all. And so I
yeah.
try to stay away from that, and I see the effect. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Same with me. I follow more of a paleo style. I don't eat processed foods or added sugars or even grains or things that I feel can cause inflammation. But yeah, I'm on a very much, because of my health history in the past, many years ago, that I had massive inflammation. I've been very conscious of eating a very low inflammatory diet. So I tend to be lower carb, higher protein, higher fat, lower carb for the most part. And any carbs I do eat, I try to, again, have them be as kind of as clean as possible. So that's interesting. So the food
And
certainly
also one
affects.
more thing I would say,
Yeah.
also if you have a poor fitness level, if your VO2
Yeah.
max is low, then
Yeah.
also you will be easily stressed by normal daily activities. So
Right.
is another thing that can cause it. Yeah, and poor sleep. So if you've had a
Mm.
poor night of sleep, you have to kind of push powers that you haven't recovered from during the night. So
Yeah.
that will give you stress levels during the day.
Makes a lot of sense.
The bottom line is that everything that we know is healthy for us is visible in HRV, and that
Mm.
makes it more actionable. So that you can it's like having a speedometer on your function of your body.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So we know we can eat healthier. We know we can exercise more. I would love to hear actually if there's any particular type of exercise that you've seen be the most beneficial to HRV.
Yeah, that would be like running, running, rowing. I don't know what you call these sports. So that you will get a better VO2 max. But you shouldn't really train too hard either. So I see a lot of
Right.
people are training too hard. And
Yeah.
like you said, that if you do a 2 hours really hard workout, the Garmin watches can give me 4 days time to recover from that.
Yeah.
And particularly lactic acid will give
Hmm.
you a lot of recovery time.
Yeah.
So most people that train actually needs to train a bit less, And of course, the couch potatoes need to exercise a bit more, but they need to be very careful because of the low VO2 max, the low fitness level. They will get lactic acid very fast. So they need to start very, very slowly. Because what they
Yeah.
often do is that they really decide that on the New Year's Day that now we're going to start a new life, and they're going to push too hard, get too much lactic acid, and be very tired for days afterwards and lose their motivation.
Yeah. Yeah. We just recorded a recent episode, will be released by the time this is released, but hasn't been released yet. But it was very interesting. It was someone who worked with athletes a lot and also worked with about adaptive capacity. And what he said was, you really don't want to go above, increase your workload by more than 20% week over week. Right. So, if you never worked out and all of a sudden the next week you go work out 5 days, and you increased by such a high rate, you're actually going to, again, have a lower HRV, have a hard time recovering. Right. So someone who works out 4 days a week wouldn't want to go to 6 or 7. Maybe they go to 5, right, first, and then kind of stabilize themselves and make sure they're recovering enough and things of that nature. So I agree with you. People who are more well-trained, they can increase their capacity, maybe 10, 15%, something like that. But people who are less trained, that are just starting out, and I've seen this very many times. I knew someone who went from not working out at all to getting a trainer and doing 2 workouts a day. And of course, within a very short period of time, he got burnt out, he got injuries, and quit entirely, right? So very good point to keep in mind for people. If you're not used to training hard or working out, it's important that you start, but start slow and build yourself up every week.
Yeah, because particularly building up your VO2 max, your level of fitness, it takes a long time. It's a very slow metric to move in a good direction. It's a lot easier to build muscles. That is quite fast, both to build muscles and lose muscles. But both building and decreasing your VO2 max, it takes a long time. So you need to be very patient to improve your VO2 max. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. We also mentioned, though, the mental side, right? The mental stress. You mentioned that people with trauma might have a hard time relaxing. Are there any recommendations for those people? Is there any type of, cognitive behavioral therapy or anything that you've said, hey, this seems to work for people, and I've seen it raise their HRV, and anything like that?
There are probably lots of ways to do that. Probably relaxation techniques in a lot of different variations. So that would be good. Breathing exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Often also getting their fitness levels up could be good. And also using cold. I see that cold is a very, very effective way to dampen inflammation. And I heard your conversation with Mark Harper also, and he's actually one of the books that I recommend in the Pulse Cure, his book, Chill. And cold, it will dampen the inflammation level in your body. And that can also be useful for depression and for anxiety and those conditions that a traumatized person with a high ACE score, the Adverse Childhood Event score, will have a problem with. So there are several ways, and the good side about these trackers is that you can see it when you do something that is improving your state. And also for a lot of people with long COVID, with fatigue problems and so on, this is kind of the only one of the few metrics that will show this, because the fatigue situation will be visible in the HRV, and particularly in the Garmin body battery system, it will be visible in the graphics of that. So then they can show it to the doctors that, okay, what I'm telling you is real. You can see here, because none of the other lab tests or radiology tests will really show us this state. But that's because of the problem is in an overloaded autonomic nervous system, and the HRV is kind of at least the easiest way to track this. And of course, the big advantage of this is that you have this instrument literally in your hands. You can use this as a speedometer for your own condition. and that so you can be kind of the boss of your own health. You can take charge of your own health.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And again, it's not just if someone puts on a wearable today and they say, "Oh, my HRV is only 20, 22, that's low. Maybe I have long COVID." It's not so simple. It's more like you have to be wearing these devices over extended period of time, and then you see, "Oh, okay, normally I'm 35 HRV. Why have I been at 20 for the last month or something like that?" Right? Then you know there's some issue, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And it seems like a lot of these wearables that give you, a fitness score or readiness score, it seems to me like a lot of them are basically HRV must be the main metric they're using, I feel like, to determine that, so-called readiness score, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So HRV is the key ingredient in their scores. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So they
Mm-hmm.
would also use how far you have been walking and how much you have been exerting yourself because they can track movement. But by far the most important metric is HRV, and also the HRV measured throughout the night. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So you've seen things like breathing techniques, meditation for the mental side of things. And then on the physical side of things, we know obviously being more active. What about like zone 2, just fast walking, right? Because I heard that also is good for VO2 max.
Yeah. Yeah. So that seems to be good. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
the advantage of zone 2 walking or running is that you can go straight back to work because as I can see on my curves that if I'm going for a run for a half an hour or so in zone 2, I can go straight to writing my book, my new book, and working. But if I work out too hard, go to zone 4 or 5, I'm exhausted. I can't do anything that really can do some good work. So I think zone 2 and rather go running for a longer time is a better way, and particularly for those who start out from a poor fitness level.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Certainly much easier because I know a lot of people say, "Oh, well, just do HIIT training. HIIT training is the best thing for VO2 max." Many people say, and I say, and it's interesting though because it really takes a toll on me. I mean, if I do 5 rounds of all out sprints or using the assault bike or just going, doing all out for 30 seconds and then taking, whatever it is, a minute or two break and then going back 30 seconds again, doing even just 5 rounds of that, it could be a very short workout, but it's exerting a lot of energy. I feel more mentally drained and tired. So curious if you have any thoughts on that.
yeah, because I also did because the Garmin watches will give you a VO2 max, and I thought I need to check it out to do a real VO2 max test, running on a treadmill. And I was running for 6 or 7 minutes, and I was totally exhausted. And the recovery time after that, the watch gave me like 90 hours, like 3 or 4 days. And I felt
Mm,
really, really crushed for several days. I'm sure I could have probably been running in zone 2 for like 2 or 3 hours and
right.
getting less trouble afterwards. And at least for me, the VO2 max measured by the watch and the VO2 max on the treadmill was the same. So
Interesting.
so at least in that sense, the test was successful. But what comes as a surprise is how much when you go up to a very high pulse, how straining this is for your system. And I suspect that the main problem is the lactic acid,
Mm,
the anaerobic part of the training.
mm-hmm. Interesting.
So
Interesting.
if you have a stressful life, otherwise, you should not. You should be careful with training as hard as that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think sleep is also one of the biggest factors there as well. Because again, stress is a very, very interesting topic, right? Because there's also a great book that I love called The Upside of Stress.
Yeah,
And she
Killer
talks about,
McGonigal. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's
it's
also
amazing
recommended
book.
in the book. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Amazing. I love that one. And so yeah, there's upside of stress, right? But then yeah, this is a very fine line.
Yeah. And her message in The Upside of Stress is that what you think about stress will affect your physiological result from the stress. If
Right.
you think stress is good for you, your heart will pump more oxygen, and your peripheral arteries will dilate to give you more blood to your organs and muscles. But if you are fearful, if you're in a threat mode and you think that stress is bad for you, and you have bad thoughts about this stress, then your heart will pump less blood, and your peripheral arteries will constrict and lead to less blood into these vital organs and muscles. And it's almost like you can see that on the soccer field. You see that if a team believes in themselves, that they are suddenly running longer and faster. And if the other team gets fearful, now we're losing, it's almost like they're running in slow motion, So
Yeah.
probably this is an important thing. And we need stress. So one of my fears about writing the book was that people would shy away from stress. But we really need stress to build resilience, to build our forces. But we have to make time for rest and restoration to kind of use that strain and to recover from it stronger. So if you just push, then we end up too tired, too fatigued, and then our immune system will not be working properly.
Yeah. 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 It's a great point about like the sports games. It's so interesting how the home team on the same exact size field with the same players will have, in basketball, sometimes you have teams that win 75% of the games on their home court and they win 25% of the games on the away court, on the same court. And so clearly there's mental aspects with the fans and people cheering you on and the way that you're looking at things. So yeah, again, I really like that book, The Upside of Stress, to kind of it helped me really reframe. I think it added years to my life just by reframing the way that I look at stress. But certainly we need to recover. So let's talk about that. How do you determine if you're going to take a day off, for example, from exercise? Is there something specific you're looking for in your HRV if it drops by a certain amount, certain percentage?
I use the Garmin 7 watch, and that will give me a training ability, training readiness. So it will give me a number. And if that number is too low, like below 60 or 65, then I will not train or maybe just walk. So I use that number, but you could use also your HRV in itself if you have another kind of device. So and it shows that the people, the athletes that are using HRV to track their training loads, they can train less and get fitter and stronger, actually, because they allow the body to recuperate and build itself stronger before they put on the next load.
Yeah.
So that is what I would do. Yeah. And yeah.
Very
And also,
interesting.
I think also the Aura Ring would tell you that take it easy today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so it would be a combination probably of your sleep scores, and which HRV is a part of that sleep score as well. And then, so basically now what if it was interesting though, a couple of days ago, I lifted weights, pretty intense workout, not too intense, but 2 days in a row. And my HRV was very, very high, even after the second night. But I usually will go 2 days on, 2 days hard, 2 days lifting weights and maybe 1 day take off just to make sure I'm resting enough. But I saw, I have a really high HRV. Does that mean I'm pretty much good to go to continue to work out, would you say?
Yes, but they don't your strength training will not have such an impact on your HRV as your running or rowing or these kind of activities. So it would be probably a lot worse if you had the HIIT training. That would probably be a lot worse score for you. So at least I find that. So it will not affect the HRV as much as this HIIT training.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense.
But it's still really important, with muscles, because we see that muscles is also important mechanically, to be strong, and of course, particularly as you age. But it's also releasing hormones that will trigger a brain-derived neurotrophic factor in your brain and improve your connections, your synapses in your brain. So, it's everything we do that is resembling the way that we used to live historically is making our bodies better. Sleeping at night, exposing ourselves to nature, to cold and heat, to real food, to sunlight is also so important. So all of this that we do that is towards the ancestral way of living will improve our health, and also it's visible in the HRV.
Yeah, very interesting. What is something surprising that you saw that you didn't expect that changed your HRV, either for the better or for the worse, that you did not expect before testing it?
I was surprised about fasting, because the first time I was fasting, I was expecting, I was feeling bad, I was hungry. So I thought, okay, now I will see a high stress level, but it was very low. So that was a surprise. I hadn't heard about that before. So that was a total surprise. And also the surprise about how much being in cold water would trigger the parasympathetic system. That was also a big surprise.
Yeah,
So
makes sense.
probably the biggest surprises. And of course, on the bad side, it was alcohol. To see the results was a lot worse than I thought. So
Yeah,
that has definitely made an impact. So I'm probably drinking alcohol now only 3 or 4 times a year.
same.
So and particularly because of the success of the book, the book, as you said in the introduction, is still on the 60th week on the best-selling list here in Norway. So it has been a busy year, and I really can't. To drink like 4 glasses of wine will put me off for like 4 or 5 days. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about people who are just doing, let's say, one or 2 glasses of wine a night, or just a little bit of alcohol? Have you seen that impacting sleep scores and
Yeah,
HRV also?
yeah.
Mhm.
People stop drinking by the numbers. Yeah. So I get, on Instagram, I get so many comments. People tag me all the time when they see the results of just 1 or 2 glasses of wine. But this is individual. So some people may not have trouble with it, and
Mm.
others have a lot. And this is also the advantage about these wearables, that it shows how you are reacting to things, not how an average of like 100 people would react to this, but how do you react to it? Because
Yeah.
normally as doctors we relate to RCTs, the research of a large group of people, and what is the average of this, and that is just useful for the ones who are at the average. But then with this we can see how do you react to
Yeah.
food, to exercise, to alcohol, to whatever, to emotional things. So I see that some people, they will be very affected by emotional trouble, others not so much.
Right.
So yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Anything else? Well, we talked about relieving stress mentally through breathing, meditation, maybe even some sort of therapy, if that's what someone needs to help with their traumas. We talked about exercise, mainly kind of longer cardio type of exercises seem to improve HRV the most. HIIT training seems to be a bit intense and takes you long to recover. So if you're going to do HIIT training, make sure you're setting aside some time to recover after that. Anything else that you think people should be aware of in terms of improving their HRV? Obviously, sleep.
Yeah, sleep. No, I think we've been into most things. Tobacco, of course, would be a problem, or nicotine can also be stressful. I'm
Ah,
not sure if you
interesting.
use a lot of nicotine in the States. In Norway, we have a thing called snuff. We put it under our lip, which is full of nicotine, and that is a high stress. But I'm not sure if you use much of that.
It's actually becoming very popular right now because a bunch of biohackers have kind of gone around saying, oh, if you do very low dose nicotine, tiny doses, I think like 2 milligrams at a time or something like that with a lozenge or something like that, that it could be good for your brain. And I've certainly tried it. I certainly have some that when I need a little pick me up or something, I'll do a little tiny thing of a lozenge. Obviously, I'm not going to smoke tobacco, but a little lozenge, 2 milligrams I think the normal cigarette has anywhere from 10 to 18 milligrams of nicotine. So this would be very small amounts, but I can certainly feel a boost in my mental thing. But yeah,
it will trigger the sympathetic nervous system. It will trigger adrenaline. So in that sense, it all depends on your total stress balance. So if you have room for high intensity training, and you can have room for a kick from the nicotine, or you can have room for a kick from eating chili, which a lot of people react to. So it all depends on the totality of it. So it's like a body budget. I know, is it Lisa Barrett? Don't remember her last name. Talking about the body budget, that you have to make sure that you have enough reserves to do that. So you shouldn't really put it on top of a stressful day. So it can depend on the totality. If you're an office worker and everything is very slow and easy, and you can relax most of the day, yeah, sure, you can put this strains on top. Yeah.
Interesting. This has been an amazing conversation, Dr. Torkil. I've learned a tremendous amount. I know many of my listeners have as well. Everyone should go buy your book, The Pulse Cure. What's the best place for people to find that book? I know you mentioned you're on Instagram. Where can people follow you and learn more?
Yeah, on Instagram, I'm the Pulse Doctor. My name is a bit Scandinavian, so I thought it's easier to just call myself the Pulse Doctor. Nice. I'm also on thepulsecure.com, which is a social website where you can see a lecture of mine and you can listen to other podcasts and so on. Yeah, that would be it. And the book is a normal book. It will be released in the US as a paperback, I think in late April. But it's already out there as an ebook and an audiobook. Because it was released in the UK in January. So and it should be available anywhere. It's a big publisher. Yeah. Nice.
This has been really great. Thank you so much, Dr. Torkil. Thank you for what you're doing and the knowledge that you're sharing with everyone. And this has been amazing. I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming to your podcast. It was very nice, and so nice for me because I've been listening to you before. So
thank you. That's my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, can you please leave us a rating or review and subscribe? I've realized that while we have actually increased our downloads a lot, we're actually getting a lot of downloads, which I'm really happy about. We actually have very few ratings. And I realized that I've never asked people really to rate much. So I'm asking you now if you could please rate and review and subscribe. And if you enjoyed the episode, please forward it along to anyone that you think will get value out of this. Also, if you haven't checked out our line of products at buypeakperformance.com, you get 20% off your first order. That's www.buypeakperformance.com. We have some incredible products, including our organic high-altitude coffee. If you don't know this, coffee is one of the most heavily sprayed with pesticides out of any crop. So it's really important that you drink organic coffee. We've gone above and beyond to source what we believe is the highest quality and healthiest organic coffee in the world. We're also famous for our organic green superfood powder. You can get 20% off of that as well at buypeakperformance.com. We also have an organic vegan and paleo plant protein. See, most of the vegan proteins out there are using brown rice protein, which is really not a good source of protein, and it's also a grain. And if you're paleo, you know that grains tend to cause inflammation in some cases for some people. And so we wanted to make one that was paleo friendly and vegan and organic. We made an amazing amino acid profile, so it's really one of the best plant proteins for muscle building. So you can check out Peak Performance Organic Plant Protein. You can find that on our website. Of course, all our products are on Amazon as well. So thanks again. And again, please, if you enjoyed the episode, please forward it along to someone who you feel can get value out of it. And please leave us a rating, review, and subscribe. Thank you.